kept pushing on, but then you went too far. When your ship has sailed and all your dreams are lost, everything is wrong, you feel like it's your fault. Just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life feels lemons, just call me. Just call me. Just call me. Just call me. You're stronger now than you ever been. You gotta leave now, it's time to catch the wind. You will climb up high and look through the clouds. And when you're feeling low, I know you'll bounce back. Oh, and just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life throws lemons, just call me. Just call me. Just call me. Just call me.
It was a long race at Sin City last week, but here tonight we come to the middle round of the round of 8. It is Homestead-Miami Speedway, race number 2 in the round of 8 for the Moonshiners Racing League Cup Series. Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for making us a part of your evening. Alongside me, my broadcast partner, David Modesbaugh. And David, we had a great race last week at Vegas, a little bit longer than I think most were anticipating, but here 200 laps tonight at Homestead to determine the who else is going to get into the championship 4, be it by points or by victory.
Well, we certainly seen a little bit of everything last week at Las Vegas, and as we mentioned last week, that number 29 team locking themselves into the championship 4. Excited to see if another team can do it tonight. Of course, Chris Davis, so dominant last week, swept the entire race, stage 1, stage 2, and the race victory. See if any of the other playoff contenders can get it done here tonight at Homestead-Miami and punch their ticket to Phoenix.
Stages are going to look very, very similar here tonight from what they did last week. It's going to be 200 laps again here tonight at Homestead. Stage breaks are going to be at laps 45 and lap 90. The same thing for the championship race at Phoenix. Speaking of the championship race, let's take a look at the point standings and how they stack up. Of course, as you mentioned, the 29 car of Chris Davis is in via winning at Las Vegas last week. Kenny Coppola right now has a very good shot at pointing his way in here tonight if he has a solid finish in that number 77 car. Kyle Holden, Shane Davis tied 15 points behind that number 77. So it's really going to behoove one of those drivers to get some sort of competitive edge tonight to give themselves the best chance at pointing their way in.
And of course, looking at the playoff standings, you see drivers like Barry Sanders, Randy Mullins, Wayne Bowen, names that we've mentioned quite a bit over the last couple of weeks below that cut line. But make no mistake about it, these drivers are quick, and they are certainly going to do what they need to tonight to try to make their way into the championship round of 4, and then, of course, into a good position in the standings as we look towards Martinsville next week. So keep that in mind. These drivers are going to be hungry, and certainly from what we've seen in practice so far, they are going all out, doing what they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another good part about going with the official NASCAR series as far as a schedule being made, because these drivers will have had a lot of practice here on this racetrack in the very recent past. Last week, the official series was here all week. I saw these drivers in some of the official sessions, a lot of practice sessions, other leagues that were running here, getting as much practice as they can coming into tonight.
Getting that practice certainly won't hurt. As we mentioned, especially for those playoff drivers, a ton on the line, and with standings and times being so close, every practice lap you can run, every advantage you can get, certainly could make the difference in that championship run.
Yep, certainly, as we are just about 15 seconds or so away from getting into the qualifying session here tonight. We do have a pretty decent-sized field of 33 drivers getting set to take on the Homestead-Miami Speedway here tonight. It's one thing that we're used to seeing is leagues tend to have their numbers drop off towards the end of the season as drivers realize they don't have a shot, or if they miss the playoffs entirely, or if they get cut out of one of the earlier rounds. It's very, very nice and very refreshing to still see effectively a full field here with just 3 rounds to go in the season.
And great on this league, finding a way to get all those drivers involved and really add to those playoff drivers' momentum, right? The more drivers you have in the field, there's kind of that opportunity to gain or lose points if a driver has a really great night or a really bad night. So pretty awesome to see this full field of drivers here as we see that 77 machine come out on the track, start laying down that outlap, gaining some speed, see what he can do. Kenny Coppola, of course, feeling pretty good being at the top of the standings right now.
Kenny Coppola has been atop the standings as long as I've been broadcasting this league, of a vast 2 weeks of knowledge, as Coppola right up against that wall and into the wall in turns 1 and 2, and that's something we're going to see out of these drivers a lot, especially in validated qualifying laps because of that, and possibly, if you hit that wall hard enough during the race, putting yourself in a bad situation.
Of course, being able to run some very quick laps on that high line, no surprise here to see him up against that wall. See what he can do to lay down a quick time here, but he's really going to have to make up for it on this next lap.
As a couple of drivers getting set to cross the line here for the first time in this session. Chris Spear, the number 7, is going to be the fastest of the drivers in qualifying thus far. Hunter Carmichael going P2 in the RS button box number 3. As Chris Davis, so you see his name light up in green, signifying that he is through to the championship 4. Kyle Holden and the rest of the drivers that are in the round of 8 will be highlighted in gold as Kenny Coppola's second lap, much better from the number 77 up to P1.
And of course, as we watched him take those laps there on the screen, he was running very quickly. No surprise to see him go up near the top of the leaderboard. Unfortunately, only having that one valid lap on the board, it might have hurt him as far as being able to improve. Now seeing some of these other times rolling in, 32.73 from Davis, Bikey there, 32.68. So these drivers moving quick and definitely finding some speed here in the qualifying.
I think Brandon Bikey, if I remember right, I think Bikey did fix his balance issue from last week. He's added another Go Faster stripe, so there's 2 Go Faster stripes on that car now. So that'll, as we know, that usually gives you an extra 40, 50 horsepower. And he's used it to perfection. He's up to P1. As we see Chad Sullivan, 15th quickest on his first lap in the number 21. Looking pretty decent here to benefit on the second lap down to the bottom for the number 21.
Search around the track, certainly see if you can find speed somewhere else. You already laid 1 lap down, no mistakes. In searching around the track, seeing if you can get a better time. And of course, Sullivan there jumping up to 6th quick with a 32.84. So certainly found some sort of speed and momentum there on that low line.
Certainly did, as we'll take a look at Randy Mullins, the 3rd place finisher last week at Las Vegas. As Mullins coming across the line, he will take P7 on lap number 1, staying high and wide. Here in lap number 2, Ed Boyles Jr. also on track, John Binder, Jordan Schmeets, Aaron Matthews, Tim Wortman, and Matt Metler all on track right now. As Mullins about to finish up his qualifying run, faster through the first half of the lap this time by. We'll see what he can do. Second lap has been the go lap for these guys so far, and right up to P2 outside front row, number 54.
No surprise seeing that 54 machine post a great qualifying time. He was up front quite a bit of the race last week, so looks like we should expect to see him there again.
High finisher in the practice session as well. Bikey was the fastest in the practice session, as we see Aaron Matthews coming through 3 and 4, 15th quickest on lap 1. Lap 2 will see him improve on lap time, but not on position, as Tim Wortman was able to crack the top 10 on lap number 1. Taking that wide line through 3 and 4 for Wortman. See what he can do here. Wortman tied with Jeff Taylor for 9th. Taylor set the lap first. Doesn't matter. Wortman P4 here in qualifying.
Wortman, a non-playoff driver who certainly showed his speed last week. Talked about him at the front of the field quite a bit. So plenty of opportunity as well for some of these non-playoff drivers to really upset some of the balance and the hopes of one of these playoff drivers securing their ticket to Phoenix coming up here at the end of the season. So something to keep an eye on. Certainly the 77 machine has an opportunity to point his way in, but everybody else still racing for that victory to guarantee that they'll make that spot in the championship 4.
Speaking of one driver trying to win his way in, Barry Sanders goes up to P9 on his qualifying attempt. Here is Shane Davis, tied for 2nd in points coming into the race today, setting his first lap of qualifying. We'll see what that 79 car can do. Lap 1, we'll see him go P8, so a solid run there at a 32.83 for Davis. So we have just about a third of this qualifying session left to go. Paul Gallimore in the 11 jumps up to P10. Davis right up against that wall. And Davis will jump up to P6, so he moves up one row. As Justin Belmonte will get back out onto the track. Belmonte must have spun it on lap number 2, so this will be, I believe this will be it. If he crosses the line here, I believe his session will be done. John Binder's in the same spot in the 33. Wayne Bowen and Derek Jacobs have gone out onto pit road but have not rolled it yet. Ryan Huff, Darren Mills, and Nicholas Atwood have not attempted a qualifying run. Again, 33 drivers set to take the field here tonight.
Still a bit of time for drivers to get their qualifying run in. Should take somewhere around a minute and a half to get all 3 laps in. So got about another 40 seconds or so for these drivers to start rolling off of pit road if they haven't made their way off yet and onto the track, and see where they stack up in this field. As you mentioned, 33 drivers, a great field here tonight. Certainly excited to see what all these drivers can do. So far, looks like from top to bottom, we don't have much more than a second separating these guys. So should be some pretty exciting racing going on all night long.
I was wrong. Belmonte was able to get that lap time in, as we are about a minute 40, which is about that cutoff mark for drivers that want to attempt to qualify and get both laps in. As Brandon Bikey right now looking for his second pole of the season, his first since back at Atlanta in July. Has a couple of front row starting spots, but other than that, he has been off of that front row for most of his attempts, and with about a minute or so to go here, it's looking like he will capture that second pole of the season.
Certainly feels good, especially this late in the season, to start getting hot. Of course, Bikey, unfortunately, not one of those playoff drivers at the moment, but certainly has been showing his speed, and it seems like there's a couple of these non-playoff drivers, right? It seems like week to week we've just been talking about consistently, so great to see them up there, not afraid to compete with these guys who are trying to win that championship.
And statistically, they do outnumber them, so odds are more likely that a non-playoff driver will win today. It has not been the case throughout the playoffs, as playoff drivers have won every single race in the playoffs thus far this season. As getting down to the final 20 some odd seconds here, Brandon Bikey has now officially secured his second pole award of the season, as it looks like the bottom 6 have not attempted a qualifying run. So it'll be Brandon Bikey and Randy Mullins on the front row here for the middle race in the round of 8 in these playoffs. Now let's get you to the official grid here for tonight's race. Brandon Bikey with that time of 32.689 will sit on the pole. Randy Mullins will sit outside of him in row number 1. Chris Davis already advanced into the championship 4, and Tim Wortman Jr. will make up row number 2. Stephen Gibson and Shane Davis in row 3. Hunter Carmichael and Kyle Holden will make up row 4, with Chad Sullivan and Paul Gallimore in row number 5. Row 6 goes to Barry Sanders and Kenny Coppola. Row 7 will see Jeffrey Taylor and Warren Young. Justin Belmonte and Jordan Schmeetz will sit in row 8. Row 9 will go to Paul Whitley and Darren Mullins. Chris Spear and Kendall Leveren will make up row 10. Aaron Matthews and Bobby Justice in row 11. Caden Norfree and Matt Metler in row 12. Ed Boyles Jr. and Jamison Middlemiss in row 13. Row 14 will see Nick King and Wayne Bowen. John Binder, Nicholas Atwood make up row 15. Derek Jacobs and Darren Mills in row 16, with Ryan Huff rounding out the field. Bowens, Binder, Atwood, Jacobs, Mills, and Huff lining up via their iRating without a qualifying time in. Weather conditions here for tonight's race. We are just about at 6 o'clock p.m. in sim time. 82 degree ambient temperature, 63 degree track temperature, 13 mile an hour winds blowing towards the south, which if I remember correctly is a crosswind going down both straightaways, a little bit more of a headwind down the front straightaway and a tailwind down the back, but mostly going across this racetrack, and that is not a wind to be messed with.
Certainly with that wind strength there, something these drivers are going to have to keep in mind. Of course, heading through the turns, it shouldn't affect them too much. But as you mentioned, I do believe you are correct. I believe that is a crosswind going down the straightaways, so could upset the balance of these race cars as they're coming on and off the turns, and certainly something to keep in mind for these drivers as we get rolling here. Lights out on the pace car. Drivers ready, lined up side by side here. Who is going to be our winner? Possibly see a playoff driver advance their way to that championship for tonight, or perhaps that number one machine of Bikey. Can he get it done? Can he do it tonight? Upset one of those playoff drivers, finally take that win, and of course, make his name known here, even though he is not a playoff driver. Certainly plenty to see. Pace car getting ready, diving off. Fans on their feet. Flagman, flag in his hand. Green flag about to fly. Here we go. We are racing. Bikey, of course, off to a great start there over Mullins, getting that push from the 29 machine of Chris Davis behind him as they head into turn 1 and 2 on that low lane. Keep in mind, the high lane is quick here, but it will eat your tires, so certainly expect to see these drivers starting to move down and use kind of a mid lane here early on in the race.
Absolutely. Randy Mullins looking to that inside. We've seen, Lord knows we've had so many races here at this racetrack over the last week or so. The inside line has definitely been the one that has prevailed as the dominant line around this racetrack as Bikey takes the first lap lead. Chad Sullivan trying to march his way forward, looking to the inside of Wortman, who's falling back on that outside lane here early.
Of course, that outside lane, great for the qualifying attempts, but as mentioned, it seems like the preferred line being that inside line to run. Not to say that you can't get it done on the outside, but it certainly seems like you need just a little bit more help to get any passes done out there.
You can't quite get it done for the entirety of the run on that outside line, as we've talked about it with the most recent tire models for about the last year or so. Here on iRacing, these multi-groove racetracks, yes, you can make the outside line work. However, rolling the bottom, staying off the gas, not putting those right side tires under as much pressure seems to be the way to get around these racetracks quickly.
And running around quickly right now they are. Brandon Bikey right now out to the lead, followed closely by Davis, Mullins, Carmichael, and Gibson, who round out our top 5, but less than a second separating these drivers right now. Couple of laps in already, and you're starting to see these drivers search around as we see Mullins in that 54 machine, followed by Carmichael in that 3 machine, looking to the outside right now, seeing if they can find some speed and make up some ground on our leader.
Brandon Bikey holding firm out in front, about a 0.3 of a second lead as we look a little bit further back. That is the 23 of Jeffrey Taylor holding the 88 and the 6, 2 playoff drivers at bay. This is back in 12th, 13th, and 14th. Sanders on that outside line trying to find himself a run. Quarter entry is not going to be where that outside line is going to be strong. It's can you get the run off of the corner? That's what's going to help the outside line.
And of course, as mentioned, those playoff drivers mired back about mid-pack of this field, so certainly looking to find some momentum, gain some positions, and work their way up into the top 10, see if they can get some stage points and certainly mark some of those extra playoff points, knowing how critical they can be in making it to the round of 4 with one more race left at Martinsville.
Especially with as close as Sanders and Belmonte are running right now, you certainly want to get the edge on one or the other, as Taylor doing a great job at keeping both of those drivers at bay. A little bit further back, Warren Young, who was one of the drivers that was racing to try to get into the playoff spot back at Charlotte a couple of weeks ago, did not quite work out for him. He's battling side by side with Kendall Leverett in the 28th. This is for 16th.
Drivers keeping that close side-by-side racing, and of course, closer to the front of the field, drivers lining up nose to tail. Everybody just sort of seeking an advantage right now. Nobody pushing the boundaries, getting extremely close where we potentially would have an incident, but the 54 machine of Mullins now looking to the inside of that number 1 machine, able to get that pass done on the low line, put Mullins up to the lead, but doesn't look like he's quite able to make it all the way to the line as Bikey is able to fight back on that outside line with Carmichael behind him. Carmichael now moves up to second place, put Mullins in third. These guys are battling it out, trying to see who can get to that top spot and lead a couple of laps.
Yep, Bikey did lead that lap in the number 1. Hunter Carmichael, following the momentum on the outside line, takes second, as Mullins now will slot back into third. There's the 3 of Carmichael, trying to get that slingshot. That's a dangerous slingshot to get with the car in front of you blinking the way Bikey is. But keeping it fine, never really got close enough for it to be a concern. As Carmichael, turn 2 is where we've seen the best runs come all week. This is, if you're going to start a move, it's going to be here in turn 2, coming off of 2.
Certainly grabbing that momentum down that back straightaway, and then, of course, using that momentum in the entry of 3 and 4. If the car in front of you dives to that low line, you can stay on the high line, try to maximize that advantage, of course, coming back out onto the straightaway, and then see if you can beat them to the line.
May have gotten a little bit of a bump, and again, part of the reason why that run off of turn 2 is so effective is because this track is not symmetrical. The exit of 2 and the entry to 3 are a lot tighter than the exit of 4 and the entry to 1, while 4 and 1 tend to broaden and slowly work its way out into the straightaway or into the corner. Turns 2 and 3 are abrupt, so if you can get that car to turn coming out of turn 2, that's what helps create that run.
Drivers, of course, at the front, still battling for these top 3 positions. You have Bikey, Carmichael, Mullins, all separated right now by 0.2 of a second. So the 54 machine diving to the inside of that number 3 machine, able to hold him off for now, but that 3 machine on the outside line has consistently been able to get a great run coming down the straightaways, getting to the back bumper of that number 1 machine, and of course at times giving that 1 machine a shot as they head down the straightaways. So these drivers right now very hungry for that top position, and of course the 54 machine of Mullins, it means quite a bit to be able to get up there to the front, be able to potentially win this thing later on and punch your ticket to that round of 4.
That run that Carmichael just got coming out of turn 2. The entry of the corner belongs to the driver on the inside. The exit by far and away belongs to the driver on the outside. So passing here is quite difficult if you don't get the run into the corner that you're expecting to get or hoping to get, because you saw it there from on board of Carmichael. You get one heck of a run coming out of these corners.
Certainly something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Carmichael running this high lane very early here. Have to wonder, there we see it. He starts moving down to that low lane. Have to wonder if he's keeping it in the back of his mind, how much tire he's using running that high lane, gaining all that momentum.
Yep, absolutely. We see not much of a run as we take a look back a little bit further. That is Justin Belmonte working his way up slowly, trying to pass that 11 car of Paul Gallimore for the 12th position. The 6 stuck up high. Now Gallimore, no slouch from what we saw last week, taking the pole at Las Vegas, his second pole award of the season in that number 11. Race did not go as well as expected for Gallimore. Now he'll break into the top 10, or break just outside of the top 10 as he gets past Shane Davis.
Of course, a lot of these names up here in the top 10, names that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, some real fast drivers. So certainly some work cut out for these guys right now, trying to break their way into the top 10, starting from the 10th place position, working our way up. You have Schmeets, Wertman, Holden, Sullivan, Coppola, Davis, Gibson, Mullins, Carmichael, and Bikey, who, of course, we've already talked about at the front of this thing. There are some very quick guys at the front of this field right now, so of course, that 88 machine of Sanders has his work cut out for him as he's now dropped back to about the 16th position. The 79 of Davis currently outside the top 10. That would be Shane Davis on the outside looking in for that top 10. Certainly trying to do what they can here, gain a couple of positions, get those points that are so critical at the end of this stage.
All 8 playoff drivers are here in the session tonight. 4 in the top 10, 4 out. As Randy Mullins, who's looking better to win his way in than race his way in, has just gotten the first laps led, not by the number 1, as Mullins continues working on that charge forward as we see Hunter Carmichael catch the outside wall, allows that train of Stephen Gibson, Chris Davis, and Kenny Coppola to go around him.
Mullins getting the opportunity to at least get a lap led on the board, but of course that number one machine of Bikey on the inside line was able to take that lead back. Mullins still not willing to give it up. Less than a tenth of a second separating these drivers right now. Of course, Gibson, Davis, and Coppola working their way up, seeing if they can get up there to the front. So this lead really heating up right now as it's really about to be a 5-car battle at the front of this thing.
Less than a car length. I'd venture to say less than a sheet of paper between those two. Coming off a turn 4 is Stephen Gibson trying to hold Chris Davis in the 29 at bay. Again, Davis in green, winner last week at Vegas. Already clinched into the championship 4 at Homestead in 2 weeks' time. Kenny Coppola, your overall points leader, could point his way in tonight in that number 77. As Chad Sullivan in the 21, he's moved his way up nicely. Plus 3 positions up into the top 6, looking at that top 5 right now.
Drivers across the field digging for positions. Chad Sullivan, one of those names that we're pretty familiar with. Seen him up front quite a bit. And of course that 21 machine getting it done today, gaining a couple of positions and making his way about to break into the top 5 here. So certainly a name to keep an eye on.
Brandon Pikey has now pulled his lead out to a couple of car lengths, so Mullins no longer right on the back of that number 1. As Sullivan looking to the inside of Chris Davis, a couple laps on the inside for Davis, and he's starting to slip back a little bit. As Coppola and Gibson battle for the 3rd spot, Coppola has it for the moment, but he is not going to be able to keep it as that run from Gibson off the outside line keeps him in 3rd, as Sullivan and Davis, as the caution is going to come out here. Might be the 7 of, oh my.
Some cars around on the front stretch. Looks like some heavy damage here. Have to take a look and see what went wrong. But of course, that 16 machine of Jamison Middlemiss there looks like it has some significant front end damage. So 2 of the other vehicles there towing their way to pit lane. So certainly some bad happenings out here today.
7 gets loose out of 4, hits the wall, and ooh, jeez.
Not enough time to react, and certainly just paying the price there. Some hard hits, and the results of just some unfortunate loss of control on the exit of 4 there.
Riding on board with Middlemiss here. He sees the incident. He's backing off, and oof. Just didn't quite have enough room. As we'll ride now on board with Ryan Huff. He was the first one to clip the side of the 7. Just, and that just goes to show it's not as easy as you think to get through one of these incidents, because right when he was able to see through the smoke, it was too late.
Certainly trying to find the gaps when you can, but as you mentioned, sometimes just when you think the smoke starts to clear and you think you have a clear line, you're just not quite clear yet, and you pay the price.
Randy Mullins into pit road. Chris Davis, Stephen Gibson, Hunter Carmichael, Darren Mullins, Bobby Justice among the many that are in. Looks like Caden Norfrey in the 44 may have had an issue and is done for the night. So that will be the first official retirement of the race, as we're about halfway through this first stage. Randy Mullins is going to start 21st here in this stage. We saw how well it worked at Vegas last week. Can the guys pitting effectively at the halfway point of the first stage make it through 20 cars to try to win this first stage?
And of course, it is very possible here. We did see that play out last week. have to see if they have enough time to make their way up through the field as they did last week. Of course, as you mentioned, being about halfway through the stage here, still plenty of time left for these drivers to make their way up through the field. And with these drivers having a total of 6 sets of tires available during the race today, 1 set on the car, 5 behind the wall, there is that opportunity to use that extra set and make up some time here under this caution.
There is a massive tire advantage here if you can get it to work and if you can find enough space to be able to make the passes. If you have 22 lap pressure tires here, you're going to look like you were shot out of a cannon, as we will have about 21 laps to go before we get to the end of this stage. The drivers up front hoping that the 20 or so drivers between them and the drivers on fresh tires is going to be enough to possibly win this stage. Brandon Bikey has led all but 1 lap here in the early stages. Kenny Coppola will line up to his outside. Chad Sullivan and Kyle Holden in row number 2 here for this restart. Jordan Schmeets and Shane Davis will be row number 3 here as drivers pitting in front of them cycle them forward. Green flag is coming back out into the restart zone. Bikey wastes no time. We're back to racing again here from Homestead.
Bikey, as you mentioned, wasting no time getting back out front, and of course working his way up to get a nice dive into turns 1 and 2, followed closely by that 77 machine. Certainly doing what he can here, see if he can get a run on that number 1 machine, see if he can lead a couple of laps. Of course, those drivers that we mentioned taking the pits, see the 54 of Mullins just working his way onto the timing tower, restarting all the way back around that 20th position. So these drivers are going to be cut out, making their way up through the field, doing everything they can on those fresh tires, but have a long way to go to make it all the way up to our leaders.
On board with Randy Mullins, and you see that's the task in front of him, and he's got 20 laps to get up 20 positions to try to win this stage. The tires will certainly help. As you can see, forget about the outside line. That's just one heck of a run thanks to grip, as Mullins gets 2 spots down the back straightaway looking for a third on Paul Whitley, but the 43, who also came in and took tires, is right there with him. Watch the 4 sliding.
Of course, why do the work yourself when you can follow somebody through the field? So 54 Mullins right now really leading the charge for those drivers on newer tires, and just going to have to really keep a mind on these drivers with newer tires, drivers with older tires. You got to be careful. You can't push too hard too soon, as there's still plenty of time left in this thing for everything to go right or everything to go wrong.
Carmichael tried a cheeky little sneak up the outside line. Didn't quite work out for him. Put himself in the wall going through turns 1. I believe Bikey still led that lap as Kenny Coppola down on the inside. Bikey's been on the bottom for most of this race, using that outside line effectively, though. Gets back clear of the 77. Wayne Bowen in the 78, trying to get around playoff contender Barry Sanders. This is for the 11th spot.
Some very close racing happening all around the track at the moment. These drivers, of course, knowing everything that's on the line, especially our playoff drivers, really hoping to point their way in. Belmonte, of course, now up into the 8th position. Holden up in 4th. Shane Davis in the 79 machine in 3rd. The 77 machine, who we believe can point his way in today, running in the 2nd place position. That leaves Sanders, Mullins, Bowen, Chris Davis, who is already in via win, on the outside of that top 10, looking in at the moment.
Speaking of Randy Mullins, yeah, he's battling for 11th now with Sanders, so that 54 is moving on those fresh tires, about to get into the top 10. Still has about 15 laps to go before the end of the stage. Bikey starting to pull out a little bit of a lead on Kenny Coppola. Kyle Holden gets up into the 3rd position ahead of Shane Davis. Remember, those two came in tied in points here tonight. Chad Sullivan rounding out the top 5 as everyone seems to be pretty single file and spread out here, except for the 54 who's moving up, looking to get into the top 10. He's to the outside of Kendall Leveren.
Mullins right now doing everything he can to take advantage as long as he can of those fresh tires. So certainly wasted no time making his way up to the top 10 as he now cracks that top 10 and starts taking a look at that number 11 machine of Gallimore saying, hey, I'm here. I'm going to do what I can to make up all these positions. And he's going to try to work his way all the way to the front of this thing. Currently separated by just under 2 seconds to our leader.
Brandon Bikey right now is running about a half a second off of his best time. And Randy Mullins running about a 10th off of his best time in this race while trying to pass traffic. So that just gives you an idea. Driver out in front, Clean Air, has a half a second drop off. The driver in the middle of the pack trying to make passes is running equal times to it, is running faster times than him.
And right now making it look easy on that inside line. That 54 machine slicing and dicing his way up through this top 10 at the moment. Now up to that 7th place position behind the 41 machine of Smeets. Smeets doing what he can to keep him in the rear view, but that 54 machine down low on that inside line. Certainly running where these drivers with those older tires can't really keep their car at the moment.
So you think it's tough to pass here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Just take a look at the 54 as he marches his way through the field. Kenny Coppola and Brandon Bikey bring us back to reality and show us, yes, it is actually quite difficult to pass around here. Coppola noses ahead, but Bikey with the run, going to keep it down the back straightaway. Bikey, Coppola, Holden, Davis, Mullins into the top 5, and he still has 10 laps to go before the end of the stage.
Certainly gaining a ton of time on our leaders right now, but Coppola and Bikey, of course, swapping positions back and forth, fighting over that lead too wide at the moment. I believe the 77 machine of Coppola was able to get a lap led this last time by. Still not quite able to get clear of that one machine on the outside. He drops back, gets into the draft of that one machine as they both go low here into turns 3 and 4. And of course, keeping an eye on that 54 machine. Look who has come to party, come to play. 77 in the one machine, still battling for that position. 54 machine of Mullins says, hey guys, I'm here. I'll take the inside this time.
Yeah, he's going to make this look very, very easy, is Randy Mullins, as he's going to go down to the inside of Kenny Coppola. He'll have that move done. Coming to the inside of Brandon Bikey, just about had him cleared. The run off of 2 is what helps Bikey, but that one car unfortunately has no chance at keeping that race lead coming through 3 and 4, as now Mullins is clear. Now Mullins can set sail, hopefully, to the stage win.
Of course, that 54 machine showing that 20 cars is not enough to hold him back today. Putting those fresh tires on this race car, really showing how much speed you can have at Homestead on those fresh tires. Working his way all the way through the field in about 12 laps, 13 laps or so from the restart. So doing a great job getting that thing up to the front. Looks like he should easily have this stage win as long as none of these other drivers on fresh tires start working their way up through the rest of the field here.
And by the way, going to those other drivers in the field, remember Stephen Gibson was lockstep with the 54 after the restart. Yeah, Gibson's only in 9th. He had just got there too. So Mullins got through the entire field before anyone else that came in to pit and take tires under that caution flag even got into the top 10, which is just insane.
Of course, the motivation for Mullins, knowing that getting a stage win here just adds a couple of extra points to your total looking into that round of 4. Possibly had a little bit more motivation than some of these other drivers. That 43 machine of Gibson, of course, not a playoff driver at the moment, but cutting his way up through the top 10, making his way to that 8th place position now as they run.
Mullins has pulled out to a 1-second lead as we hit 6 laps to go here in the stage. 21 of Chad Sullivan gets into the top 5, but is having to fight with Shane Davis in order to stay there in the number 79. Davis to that inside. Can he make the move stick? Oh, contact between the two. It's going to send both of them down to the inside, and that will bring out the caution.
Davis able to get those brakes locked up before they touch the inside wall, so only damage for these drivers, of course, coming from the contact between them. Of course, Shane Davis being one of those playoff drivers, I'm sure, is not very happy about having that contact and losing that position in the top 10.
Now, I believe because we are so close to the stage break that this will most likely be the stage caution. As we'll take a look at the battle all the way through here. This is from earlier on in the last lap. Was able to hold on to that outside lane, doing a great job there. Was the 79 of Davis. Outside line's going to get the run here, as you would expect. Swings it back down to the inside. Pretty standard through 1 and 2, and then, as we've seen so much this week, gets loose off the top, and into the lower car he goes. And you're right, a great job by Davis to lock right up and not hit that inside wall.
Able to at least minimize the amount of damage he had here, as we see good majority of our leaders making their way onto pit road for service this time by, and getting it to the attention of that crew. We saw how critical those fresh tires are here, so no surprise to see the jacks getting in under these vehicles and those tires going on.
Now, my guess here is that it will not be the stage caution, because if it were, I would have to assume that we would have seen Mullins, Bikey, Coppola, Holden all come in. But since they're not wanting to give up their position, I would have to assume we are going to have maybe a 1 or a 2 lap shootout to get to the end of the first stage.
I would have to believe that you are correct there. Have to think that especially Mullins, knowing how quickly he made his way up through the field, that those tires would be ready for a swap. So do believe we'll see him come in here at the end, the official end of the stage, and no surprise to see him at least stay out if this is not the end of the stage.
Tim Wortman deciding to come in from 14th position. So some guys are coming in and coming back in, but the real tell would be the leaders. And if you're a guy like Brandon Bikey or Coppola or Holden or Sullivan, Belmonte, who didn't pit yet, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. If this were the stage, it's a no-brainer to come in. Which I would guess, was it going to be a 1, maybe a 2-lap shootout before the end of the stage here?
And especially with those names you just mentioned, the playoff drivers in the top 10 right now, cannot blame them at all. Hold that position, do what you can. It can't be that far of a run, as you mentioned. Maybe a 2-lap shootout to the end of this thing. See if you can hold on, get those stage points that are so critical that really could make the difference heading into Martinsville next week.
Because at this point, we are going to get the green flag, assuming that we're on 2 to go right now. We will get the caution flag starting, the green flag, I should say, starting lap 45, which is, at the end of that lap would be the stage break. So it looks like 1 lap and then we're back under caution, unless they decide to extend it a lap to give some guys a chance to move up, as the lights should go out on the pace car now, and they do. So we will be starting this race once again on the lap that the stage is set to be done.
Does appear to be a sprint to the end of this stage. We will get the green flag come back around very quickly, just over 30 seconds here, and then of course back to the stage break. But We'll keep you appraised of all the action right now. Mullins, the control car, on the inside line over that number 1 machine of Bikey, who, of course, was our pole sitter. Mullins, we expect having those fresher tires to really be able to get things done here and be able to get that stage win.
So it will be Randy Mullins on fresher tires, lap 22. Brandon Bikey has not pit yet in this race. Will line up to the outside of this front row here. Coppola, Holden, Sullivan, Belmonte, and Gallimore are the drivers inside the top 10 that have not pit. Mullins, Gibson, Carmichael, and Chris Davis have pit in the top 10. Green flag back in the air. Good jump from Randy Mullins. Bikey gets down to the bottom. He'll chop off Kenny Coppola. Into turn 1 they go.
54 machine wasting no time there, looking like he went almost immediately as they hit that restart zone. No surprise to see him out to a great lead. Of course, that leaves Bikey and Coppola fighting over that second place position at the moment. And then Sullivan and Holding battling it out for that 4th and 5th place position. Looks like Mullins will be able to get it done here, but the battle between Bikey and Coppola looks like Bikey will edge out over that one. Sullivan, Holden, Gibson, Carmichael, Gallimore, Belmonte, and Lavron, of course, rounding out the top 10 for the end of the stage.
So it will be Randy Mullins taking the RS Button Box's Stage 1 victory. Number 54 coming into pit halfway through the stage, worked his way through the field, and gets the green and white checkered flag. We will take you into stage number 2 when we return here on Sim Racing Media. Race number 2 in the round of 8 here from Homestead-Miami Speedway, getting set to go back to green flag racing to begin stage number 2. Stage 1 taken and won by the 54 of Randy Mullins. Drivers that came into pit under the caution on lap 40 decided to stay out. That will leave Jeffrey Taylor and Jordan Schmeetz out in front here to begin what will be a 40-lap stage to lap 90. Green flag coming back out. We are racing once again here at Homestead.
Jeff Taylor, the control car there, getting a good jump as we head into turns 1 and 2, as you mentioned, with that short time between the pits and the end of the stage. A couple of these drivers opting to stay out. So we see Taylor to the front. Davis, of course, taking advantage of the track position here to start the stage, sitting right now in position number 2. But that leaves most of our playoff drivers outside of the top 10 looking in, trying to get that work done and get their way back up through here, as we see some unfamiliar names with Schmeetz, Mills, Young, Workman, King, Whitley, Bikey, and the other Mullins currently occupying the top 10.
And you can see what this has caused here. It's caused one heck of a hornet's nest in the middle of the field. Brandon Bikey getting up out in front of the 64, 74, 64, 77. 3 wide going through turns 3 and 4 right now. This is for just inside the top 10. Coppola sitting as the final car, or Mullins, pardon me, the final car in the top 10, as we have a caution on the speedway. It appears to be Stephen Gibson in the 43. There he is. I believe finished 5th in the last stage. Now backwards at the beginning of stage 2.
Drivers looking like they can get everything sorted, everybody back going the right way. Have to take a look and see what happens here.
Looks like he gets hit by the 78 into the corner and then catches, I believe that's Ed Boyles Jr. in the 38. Was not sure who he was racing there. Just as that happened, I believe it was the 78 of Bowen. Jump on board oh, just a little too late there. See it again here. This from Bowen's perspective. It looked like he got him in the corner. Yep, there he is right there. And it was on from there, and there's the 38 getting into the wall. From on board of Ed Boyles. Try and try and try it. Ooh, just about got through it. And, oh, took another good hit. So that will be caution number 3 on the night for incident. That is Jeffrey Taylor and Shane Davis. Shane Davis was the only driver in the playoffs that restarted in the top 10 at the beginning of the stage. That was because, again, of the pit strategy selection. Just he and Kenny Coppola, 79 and 77. The only 2 playoff drivers currently residing in the top 10 at the moment.
Of course, taking a look through a couple of these drivers currently in the top 10. Some names that would be some pretty big movers. You have Nick King in the 4 machine. That would be plus 20 spots as they run right now. Darren Mills currently occupying that 4th place spot, plus 28 positions. So certainly some of these drivers getting an opportunity, seeing the front of the field right now, really shaking some things up. Drivers that we don't see too often here near the front of the field, and certainly haven't seen up here today. So as some of those other drivers that were up here in the top 10 make their way up through the field, they're going to have to keep in mind that these drivers who they haven't seen up here are going to be occupying some of those spots and try to pick their way around them and tiptoe around them as needed.
Darren Mills did not qualify, which is why he's up as many positions as he is. I believe started second to last here in this race tonight in that number 2. Nick King driving a car that we saw earlier on this week, I believe in the ISNF series. That is a throwback to Kevin Harvick's championship car. What was it, 2013 or 14? Harvick won that championship. It was 13, wasn't it?
Do not remember the year for sure. I want to say that it was 2013, but I am not confident with the answer.
That was the car that Harvick decided to race in real life to throw back to that championship, and it's been very popular here this week on iRacing among the Kevin Harvick fan base. It's amazing how your opinion on a driver changes when their career is almost up. I never really, because being a Gordon fan, I never really was a Harvick fan at all. But now you look back, I guess it's kind of that you don't know what you have till it's gone kind of deal. As we get set to go racing. Go ahead.
That it is, and pace car, of course, getting ready to make the hard turn as we are making our way through the turn right now. Pace car died off, and that leaves Taylor as the control car yet again on the restart, hitting the restart zone. Off to a great restart over Davis, and Davis piloting that 79 machine, going to have to compete with Schmeets now to his inside. Schmeets will take that inside lane. Davis in the high lane right now, just trying to gain momentum as he comes off the turn, see if he can get past Schmeets and back up to the bumper of Taylor.
Schmeets will hold on to that second spot, at least for the moment, as Davis gets back past Darren Mills. One car down there on the bottom, I believe that is the 8 of Warren Young. It is Young working his way back up through the field, has 3 cars side by side by side. That would be Brandon Bikey, led most of the first stage. Now 3 wide, looking to get around that 83. Remember, these guys just came in, so guys on fresher tires trying to work their way through the field again.
We talked about a hornet's nest last week at Las Vegas. Right now, right around the end of that top 10, there is an absolute hornet's nest of these drivers who have been at the front of this field, starting to work their way up, starting to make their way back into the top 10 as you see drivers going 2 and 3 wide, trying to fight their way into the top 10 right now.
Pitters moving forward, non-pitters moving backwards as that 2 of Darren Mills gets run over by the 59 of Holden. Holden on the fresher tires, able to keep it. Mike, just look at this. Just look at this. They're all over the place.
As I mentioned, an absolute hornet's nest of cars right now. These guys really making their way up through the field. That 2 machine was slowing down there. Looks like he has another little bit of a wiggle coming out of 3 and 4, able to keep that car straight. Have to wonder if just that slightly older tire is giving him some issues in this dirty air.
Jeffrey Taylor still out in front by about a half a second. Jordan Schmeets now has Shane Davis for company behind him. Davis has the pole sitter Brandon Bikey for company in the number 1. 77 of Kenny Coppola there, rounding out the top 5. Justin Belmonte and Kyle Holden, the other 2 drivers that are now in the playoffs that are in the top 10. Next, you have to go all the way back to 16th to find Randy Mullins in the 54 Stage 1 winner. Not finding it as easy now with drivers not on 22-lap older tires to get up through this field.
Well, it's real easy to pass when you have a tire advantage, but of course that 54 machine of Randy Mullins now on some even tire strategy with these drivers around him. Really seeing how hard it is to get by these drivers when you don't have that at least half a second advantage over them. So working their way up slowly but surely, but taking their time getting up to that top 10.
Bypassed Chris Davis on that. Davis already locked into the championship 4 after winning at Vegas last week. If you're just joining us, drivers in the playoffs on the timing and scoring pylon, highlighted in gold, are in the playoffs. Davis in green locked in as a big wiggle. That looked like it was out of the 8 of Warren Young. He's possibly going to fall out of the top 10 here. Gets passed for 9th by Chad Sullivan. Now Paul Whitley in the 74 on the attack.
Just a little bit of a handling issue there for the 8 machine. Of course, seeing the speed consequence of it on the track, falling back into the clutches of that 4 and 74 machine of King and Whitley, as mentioned. So doing what he can, holding on to that 10th spot right now. But of course, a bunch of these drivers not too far behind him, pretty hungry to make their way into the top 10.
Whitley may have decided to bail out there as we're 3 wide. Chris Davis in the middle, blinking there in the 29. 4 wide through 3 and 4. The 28 somehow able to not hit anyone. That's Kendall Levron. Let's jump on board with him. Yeah, there's a couple of cars around him. There's also one to his inside that he gets into. That was the 54 of Mullins.
Traffic, never heard of it. We'll just put 4 cars all the way across the track and keep racing here. These drivers really putting on a clinic of what it means to race around each other right now. And of course, as mentioned, really fighting over those positions to make their way into the top 10 right now. So drivers doing what they can, some very quick drivers racing around each other. And of course, as I mentioned, just really showing some professional driving. Managing to run 4 wide through one of these turns is no small feat.
Hey, you're looking up, looking out through the front window, you're like, wow, that's crazy. You look in the little rearview mirror up at the top of the screen there, it's not much better. They've been side by side 3 wide the entire time behind him too. Boy, a big
drivers,
run there.
Of course, not wanting to miss out on those points opportunities, so doing what they can to make these passes while they are all stacked up. But of course, racing this close together for that long, some drivers are really going to start abusing those tires, and some of those drivers are going to have some better tires. Be interested to see how it plays out, especially with this midfield pack here. If they end up switching line, some of those drivers trying to make their way to the outside, as we see the 5 and the 28 get together there. 5 able to keep some control of that car, and what a great way to hold on to it. Does cost him a ton of positions, but able to keep that car straight.
5 of Matthews getting hit in the rear by Kendall Levering. By the way, all that wild and crazy racing, that was all for 15th, by the way, as now Lefford looking to the outside of Barry Sanders, trying to maintain that position. Sanders up into 16th, and he really needs to get a move on as one of the guys towards the bottom in points. Barry Sanders in that 88 really needs to push to move forward.
Right now, the battle for our lead really hot. Bikey and Schmeets right now battling it out, trying to see who can get it done. The inside-outside classic battle happening right now. You have Schmeets down low. Bikey, of course, making his way back up to the front on the outside line, seeing if he can get it done, get back up there, lead a couple of laps.
And again, there's the tire advantage when the drivers last came into pit. 6 laps may not seem like a lot from lap 41 to 47, but around a racetrack that eats up tires the way this place does, that is a world of difference. And that is what the 1 and the 77 right now are trying to show, is that their cars are a lot faster, even on only 6-lap fresher tires.
And especially talking about this current tire model, it seems to me like there is a wall that you essentially run into as those tires really do start to wear, and you just start losing speed. That 41 machine right now, of course, as you mentioned, only a couple of laps difference between these cars, but certainly doing what he can to hold on to that machine right now, as you see 3 cars easily starting to make their way by. That 77 of Coppola to the front, Bikey in second right now, that 79 of Davis in third, 59 machine of Holden also making his way by.
Davis just clipped the wall going into turn 1, so that will move him back to the 4th position. Gets a good run, though, off the top coming out of 2. That's going to move him to the inside of Kyle Holden. He'll take that spot back. That's one good thing about running this outside line. If you hit the wall, it doesn't lose you too much because you typically bounce right off it and don't hit all that hard in the first place.
Able to keep the momentum going, and of course using what he can here, getting back to that bumper of the 79 machine.
Shane Davis, again, another one of those drivers that did not come into pit under the stage break, but came in on the caution before, so he's maintained his tires well. Jeffrey Taylor, who was the leader here in this stage, is now moving back up. He's gotten into the 6th position, getting around the 83 of Tim Wharton and Jr., as the first 13 cars are in a pretty nice group of their own. Then you get to Barry Sanders and Kendall Levrin. Those two are running 14th and 15th, running side by side, about a second behind the lead group. And then it's pretty much the rest of the field from there. Matt Mettler about 5 seconds off the second group. Derek Jacobs a further 3 seconds off of Mettler. Jamison Middlemiss, Ed Boyles, Jamison Middlemiss around as well as, that was a big save there from Sanders. Ryan Huff, Chris Spear, Caden Norfree, Nicholas Atwood, Bobby Justice, and Ed Boyles, the drivers that are no longer participating here in the race tonight, most of them with damage from accidents.
77 machine of Coppola leading the way right now, as we see that number 1 machine of Bikey in second, trying to hold off the 79 of Davis and Holden, who are currently looking to take that position away from him. Coppola out to about a half-second advantage over this battle for second right now, as they run a 3-car battle for the second place position.
Toyota's performing very, very well here tonight. Toyota holds 1st, 3rd, and 4th on the racetrack. Chris Davis and a Toyota as well, running in the 10th spot. And I mentioned it last night with, what was last night? Tuesday. That would be the Extreme Series that I was broadcasting last night. Nice to see Toyota's out on the racetrack. It's one of the lesser used of the 3. Typically Chevrolet, of course, is the dominant brand. Ford secondary, but Toyota's handle quite nice, and not too many people drive them, so it's nice to see them performing up here, performing well.
As mentioned, not one of the cars that we see too often, but the Camry really showing some speed and some power today, as the 77 machine of Coppola out front driving a Toyota Camry, the 3rd and 4th place position held by Toyotas right now. So certainly these drivers getting it done regardless of manufacturer, and of course that 77 machine fast all season long here in the Moonshiners series. So no surprise to see him out front, and of course sporting that Toyota, he's been super quick in it all season long.
Now, I misspoke before. I had mentioned of the drivers that were out of the race, I had mentioned Chris Spear in that. Yeah, he's no longer out of the race after spending the last 42 minutes on pit road repairing that car, and I'm sure getting an engine replacement as well. The 32-year-old from Carrollton, Texas, is going to persevere and try to get as many laps run and done here tonight. He's about to go from 31st to 30th by passing Nicholas Atwood on this lap. Very, very well done, sir.
Down but not out. Certainly is always opportunity to be had. So getting back out on the track, running some laps, and of course, one of my favorite things about the iRacing service is just the friendships made. So being able to get out there and compete with those friends on a Wednesday night is just something great to do.
100%. And right now he'll get as high as 28th, as Bobby Justice and Ed Boyles Jr. are the 2 drivers that are out of the race that are in front of him. He's got about 25, 26 more laps before he gets to the top of where he can run. And as long as drivers, as 59 gets into the wall, that's Holden, and loses a couple of spots. As long as drivers retire with more than, say, 55 laps to go, he will he'll start gaining some more positions.
as we run right now. The 77 machine still out front, gaining some time, out to about 7/10 of a second lead right now, followed by the 79 machine of Davis, the 1 of Bikey, 6 of Belmonte here, 41 of Schmitz rounding out the top 5. These drivers really on a long green flag run here, showing just how much that tire wear is affecting them, as we see the field a bit more spread out than we've seen at any other point throughout the rest of this race. But make no mistake about it, there are still some hot battles on the track. Right now we're watching that 41 machine on the outside of the 21 machine. That would be Schmitz and Sullivan battling for that 5th and 6th place position.
9 laps to go until the end of the stage, and to your point, we had a caution on the very first lap of this stage, but we have run green since. We'll have about 105 laps to go before the end of the race, as Belmonte catching the wall going into turn 3, trying to block off Schmitz. Brandon Bikey also running on that outside lane just in front of them, as Belmonte appears to gain a little bit on that one. And again, that slingshot from the outside line proving big for Schmitz, as he'll take that to the outside of the 6, but not for too long.
Gaining positions, gaining time, and of course, here in a couple of laps, gaining points. Very critical for this number 6 machine, keeping those playoff hopes alive right now. Coppola in the 77 machine looks like he should get a stage win here. 79 of Davis should be able to lock down some points in that 2nd place position. That leaves the 6 machine, 59 machine, of course, the 29 machine, our other playoff drivers currently in the top 10 to lock down those points. Of course, the 29 machine not having to worry about those, as he locked himself into that championship round of 4 last week at Las Vegas.
Justin Belmonte, we're riding on board with him, heard him hit the wall going into turn 1 as well. Currently right now, of those drivers that you mentioned that are in the playoffs, Barry Sanders running in 16th is currently the lowest running of the playoff drivers. We have 5 of the 8 currently running in the top 10. Belmonte, the middleman, running in 3rd of the playoff drivers in the top 10. Kenny Coppola and Shane Davis starting to run away with it a little bit. Coppola out to a 1.1 second lead. Shane Davis had gotten out to about 3/4 of a second over the rest of the field, but now Bikey starting to reel him back in, and Davis, one of those drivers that came in on lap 41, still able to hang with these guys up here at the front.
Davis showing that it certainly is possible to save some tire here and able to compete with these drivers that have just slightly fresher tires. Of course, 77 machine at this point all but checked out at almost a 1.5 second lead over our 2nd place position at the moment. And that 79 machine starting to see that gap between him and that 1 machine dwindle down to about half a second right now, as they are running on track between Bikey and Davis.
Schmitz losing out on that 5th position to Justin Belmonte, as Chad Sullivan trying to grab that 3rd spot and has it for the moment. Bikey just has not had the run here in the 2nd stage that he had in the 1st. He was out in front, qualified on the pole, led all but a couple of laps in the 1st stage, but Bikey has not had things go his own way here in this stage, and with 3 laps to go, mired in 3rd, has not led a lap yet this stage.
Showing just how important that clean air can be. Of course, having to work your way through traffic is going to slow you down. So that number 1 machine so far unable to lead a lap. Looks like he won't lead a lap here in stage 2. Currently fighting, trying to hold on to that 3rd place position, as Sullivan is right at his bumper. And of course, he's looking forward in his windshield, looking to that 79 machine, seeing if he can grab 2nd place position from that 79 machine of Davis.
Davis, he's been about a 10th or so faster a lap than Davis, has both Sullivan and Bikey, and now Sullivan gets a good run. He will pass Bikey coming through turns 1 and 2 here as we head through 3 and 4 for the final time, or the penultimate time here in stage number 2. Bikey right up against that wall, has a little bit of a wiggle. It's going to be a nice little chance here for Chad Davis here on the final lap of the stage.
And of course, 21, 79, both trying to make their way down as low as they can get it. Sullivan currently finding a way to get to the inside of that 79 machine. Not quite able to get an advantage as he's now coming back up, trying to get in, but Bikey there able to shut him out as we go 3 wide through the turn here. 21 inside, 79 middle, number 1 on the outside. That leaves 77 machine of Coppola take the stage win here unopposed. That leaves Davis and Sullivan and Bikey to battle it out for that next position. Looks like the 21 of Sullivan will take second. Number 1 of Bikey will have third, and that will leave the 79 of Davis in fourth there. Have to see for sure how it plays out as the caution is now out. That leaves the 6 of Belmonte there in 5th position, rounding out the top 5 for stage 2.
Here it is again, the battle for the second position as Bikey not quite able. Outside, 79, 21, 1. Second, third, and fourth here in the stage, but it is Kenny Coppola in the number 77 taking his 23rd RS Button Box stage win of the season. We will take a quick break, be right back with the beginning of the final stage here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Stages 1 and 2 in the books, getting set for the final 105 laps here from the Homestead-Miami Speedway before we get set for 2,500 to close out the round of 8 at Martinsville next week. Green flag getting set to come out. Kenny Coppola winning the race off of pit road. Brandon Bikey will start on the front row for the first time since the opening restart. Green flag back in the air. 77 in control.
77 out to the point. Number 1 machine side by side with the 79 machine of Davis. Does look like that number 1 machine is able to get the advantage right midway through the turn, slide down in front of that 79 machine there. 77 out to a great jump, about 0.3 of a second lead at the moment. Most of our drivers here in the field enjoying those fresh tires, but as we were mentioning on the break, looks like there was a couple of strategy changes throughout the field. Wayne Bowen having a pit stop time of just over 7.5 seconds here, so cars to keep an eye on, see what kind of strategy they're running.
Caution is out. This one looks like it's further towards the back of the field, and it involves one of the chase drivers. That is Barry Sanders in the 88 that has gone around. A couple of other drivers involved. Looks like Nick King may have caught a piece of it. Matt Mettler, slow and with front end damage. There's the front end of that number 89 car. Let's take a look and see what happened here. This would have been coming out of turn 4. Oh, this happens in front. Oh, it's the 4 of King gets loose. Let's see it again here. 4 gets loose into the 8. Oh, just missed the 88. Mettler didn't, though. 27 gets a bit. There's the 2. There's the 7 sliding in. A couple guys got a pretty decent piece of that as jump on board of the 89 of Matt Mettler. Tried to coast his way through it, and unfortunately mistimed it. From above. Coming off a 4. You see the 16 and the 7. That was a separate incident involving those two. It was a little bit further behind.
Couple of drivers just unfortunately wrong place, wrong time for a few of them. That leaves us to stack the field back up here. 77 maintains his advantage. We'll restart on the front row again with that number 1 machine. So see those drivers getting it done yet again. Have a feeling that for the rest of the night, that 1 machine, that 77 machine, going to be in a close battle for that lead, barring any other incidents slowing us back up here again.
Now, we made the joke last week. The schedule that we were given for Martinsville has 2,500 laps on it for next week, with stage breaks at laps 60 and 120. So that's going to be one heck of a long final stage for Martinsville, and then 200 laps at Phoenix to close out this season. And again, I hope you like Martinsville hot dogs, because we're going to be having a couple of them. We're going to have to ask John to see if Uber is covered on our payment plan for next week.
Certainly going to have to make sure that during the endurance racing that we can get some supplies into the booth here somehow. But these drivers should be running about 250 laps next week. That 2,500 laps on the schedule, of course, being a typo with the extra 0 in there. Certainly wouldn't mind seeing 2,500 laps, but as far as next week, I don't think I'm quite prepared to go for an endurance race.
Hold on. Who wants to see 2,500 laps anywhere? I mean, I love
2,500 laps at Martinsville.
Again,
absolute
still
endurance race. I don't know if I'd want to see it in a cup car, but you could have some fun depending on what kind of vehicle you had in there. You could certainly make it a good time.
I mean, that's even long for a go-kart race around Martinsville. You don't even have to brake for that. Lap times might still be similar. Just chuck that little thing in there. So we are
full throttle, wide open, see how long you can go.
Exactly. And some of these drivers, some of these playoff drivers here, as we just hit the halfway point in this race. Next week, they're not going to be able to do the Hail Melon, so the Hail Mary is going to have to work just fine for them. As take a look at the point standings coming into tonight's race. Of course, Chris Davis sitting in fourth, winner last week, so he is clinched in. Kenny Coppola most likely will point his way in tonight, whether he wins or not. Kyle Holden, Shane Davis coming in tied, but guys like Barry Sanders, Randy Mullins, who won the first stage tonight, those guys are going to be in a Hail Melon situation when it comes to Martinsville next week.
Of course, all these drivers knowing what they need to do to get it done. That 77 machine having a good run all night tonight. So no surprise to see him up front wanting to get that win to guarantee that he's locked in. Lights out on the pace car right now. He's in control of this restart. That number 1 machine to his outside. Had the pole earlier. See if he can get a jump on the 77 as the green flag is back in the air. 77 out to a great restart. Of course, this time that number 1 machine getting a little bit better of a restart, fighting that 79, not dropping off quite as much off of our leader.
Another thing we've completely neglected to mention is the fact that we are now in the night. This twilight start here tonight for these drivers has given away pretty much to full night. Track and ambient temperatures have pretty much remained the same, as has the wind. But again, we are just about at 7:15 p.m. in sim time, so night has fallen here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, and that's going to present a whole new set of challenges for these drivers.
Starting to keep an eye on those track and tire temps. It's certainly going to make a difference here as track cools down. Should be able to find a little bit more grip, maybe open up another groove or two for these drivers to explore. And of course, right now keeping an eye on that number 6 machine on the inside of that 41 machine of Schmitz. Belmonte working his way up into the top 5 here. And certainly looking ahead, seeing if he can get up to the front of this thing, get a couple of laps led, and maybe even be there at the end, secure his spot in that championship 4.
Belmonte, the winner of the final race in the final 2 races, actually, in the round of 12 at Talladega and at the Charlotte Roval. So Belmonte does have a couple of wins here in the playoffs. Trying to hold off Schmitz for that 4th position, and a big wiggle by Tim Wortman almost put him out of this race. We saw what happened when the 7 had a very similar wiggle coming through turn 4. He was in the pits for 41 minutes. Wortman just about had the same thing happen to him. Oh, still wiggle there. Oh no, another
on with old tires.
Kyle Holden.
Some big hits coming back through the field there, and of course for the playoff machine of that 59, some big implications. Hoping he didn't take too much damage there, as he does have to tow back to pit road. See what we can get out of this, but that 59 machine of Holden looking like they might be putting it on the trailer for the night.
It's Paul Whitley going through the turn 3 and 4 road course layout here at Homestead. Lot of damage on both front tires of that number 74 Ram welding and fabrication machine.
Crab walking that 74 machine down pit lane.
Yeah, that he is, and we'll jump from above here coming out of turn 2. Try to see what happened with Kyle Holden. Oh, he got caught with the 41, and then the 41 just finished him off when he came back up the track, and that was a big hit for the 74. Wrong place, wrong time.
Of course, that high-speed section of the track, as you mentioned, just nowhere for that 74 machine to go. Catches the quarter panel of Kyle Holden in the 59 machine there as he bounced off that outside wall and was going to start making his way back down the track. So some very hard, heavy damage to both of those vehicles. And again, as mentioned, I believe that 59 team of Holden has put the car on the trailer, said we'll see you next week at Martinsville.
Hard hits to the front and back for the 74, and just goes to show it's a problem in racing. Sometimes you do everything right and still end up in the wrong place, as that looked like what happened there to the 74, as Whitley will be on pit road for quite some time. As you mentioned, Kyle Holden towing, he might be done tonight as well. That's a big hit for him as far as point standings goes. Does help that he came into this race tied for second, just 15 points off the lead, but still you do not want to DNF in one of these playoff races.
Especially here in the round of 8, just 3 races to get it done. Last week at Vegas, here at Homestead, and of course next week, all hopes and dreams coming to a head there at Martinsville, seeing who will make it to race out in the desert against that 29 team of Chris Davis, who's already locked himself into the playoffs thanks to his win last week at Las Vegas.
Absolutely, is just inching closer and closer and closer to that championship race with every lap that is run. As John Binder, Nick King, there's John Binder in the 33, going back out onto the racetrack. He's had a couple of excursions here this evening. He's been on pit road now. This is the 9th time he has been down on pit road. Not to be outdone is the man who won the first stage, Randy Mullins. He's been down on and off pit road 8 times here tonight. Now, a lot of those are fuel stops, but still, this is after winning that first stage, and it's not like he wasn't competitive in that first stage. He came into pit from second, but after winning that first stage, getting mired back in the field, he has been nowhere since.
Certainly has to have some sort of strategy in mind as we see him diving down again for some fuel. Have to wonder if he's just taking some laps, starting to make some calculations and seeing how far he can push a full tank. Taking every opportunity he can, of course, then under caution to just come in, top that off, and push that last money stop out a little bit farther.
So again, that's pit stop number 9 for Randy Mullins, and there is pit stop number 10 for John Binder. So it'll be a race between those two tonight to see who will be on pit road more tonight. And Binder not letting that 54 get any sort of advantage on him as he stays one pit stop ahead. One position ahead of Shane Davis will be Kenny Coppola, the Stage 2 winner. Again, 23rd stage win of the season for Coppola, by far and away the leader in that category this year, as he will have Justin Belmonte lining up behind him. So playoff drivers running 1, 2, 3, and 5 here as we begin lap 110 in the final stage of this race. Pace car is off, and again, wasting no time. Oh, actually decided to wait a little bit. Did Coppola, caught me off, and it looks like it caught off Justin Belmonte as well, who has Shane Davis come down low in front of him.
Keeping everybody guessing, that is, of course, the name of the game. Davis not fooled too much, able to get enough of an advantage over that 6 machine to slot down in front of him there in turns 1 and 2, but now battling it out, Belmonte and Davis fighting over that 2nd and 3rd place position. You have Chris Davis behind them in the 29 machine, already locked into the playoffs, currently holding off the drivers behind him, fighting over that 5th place position. You have Sullivan, Bowen, Gibson, and Taylor all in a flurry of machines right now, battling it out as we see some driving 2 and 3 wide behind our 5th place contender.
Top 5 drivers are all playoff contenders. Bowen, the last of those. Barry Sanders out there in the number 88, that black and blue machine on the outside. There he goes, running in the 9th spot. So he has gotten back up through the field. He does have a 6-lap tire advantage, so he's going to try to use that to full effect. Gets up to 8th place, right behind the 23 of Jeffrey Taylor, who's led some laps tonight.
Of course, that 88 machine being mired back in traffic for a good portion of this race. Good to see him up here into the top 10. Of course, that puts our other playoff driver of the 54 machine of Mullins back quite a long ways. As we mentioned, taking that pit stop, getting that fuel strategy has put him all the way back around that 20th position as we run right now. 59 machine of Holden, the last playoff driver, of course, still being in pit lane. Not sure if they're going to take those repairs or just put that car on the hauler and call it a night.
Gibson and the 11 of Gallimore colliding coming out of turn 2 as Gibson started to trickle down the racetrack. As Gibson holding that outside line. Barry Sanders about to get swallowed up in the middle as Hunter Carmichael, who qualified 7th, had some time up at the front of the field earlier on. He gets to the outside and takes a couple of spots back up to 7th where he started tonight.
Drivers from first place on back through 10th, not separated by any more than 2 seconds. Everybody very hungry to get things, but there is still plenty of time left to go here. Coming into the line, 86 to go.
Kenny Coppola has gotten out to a 3/4 of a second lead on the rest of the field. Everyone else is right here in this little gaggle as Sanders still sitting in the middle of this group. Now trying to get away as Jeffrey Taylor still sits to the inside of the 88.
Of course, advantage for this 88 machine right now is he's been running in the middle of this field all night long, so he has seen the 2, 3, 4 wide moves going on all around him, and of course, now racing up in the top 10, seeing this gaggle of cars all together. Very familiar with racing around quite a few of these contenders, knowing what he needs to do to get things done, at least maintain his position here, holding on to that 9th place spot for now.
Absolutely, and we're still running very close together, side by side, 3 wide. Chad Sullivan looking to the inside, trying to keep Hunter Carmichael at bay. Cannot do that. Still, top 5 are playoff drivers. 6 of the 7 that are still participating in the race are in the top 10. The lowest running is Randy Mullins, again stage 1 winner, as the 11 has a big slide going down to the inside. No grass on the bottom of Homestead-Miami Speedway anymore. Able to keep it straight, able to keep it going.
Drivers all the way back through the field, really from that 2nd place position all the way on back through the field, just battling it out right now. 2, 3 wide, and occasionally getting a position or 2 that are lining up nose to tail, but make no mistake about it, they're just lining up, using that draft, trying to get that slingshot effect to get around them coming up for the next turn.
Chad Sullivan still battling to the inside, or trying to anyway, on the inside of Barry Sanders, who's as high as he has been tonight. Up in the 8th spot currently is the number 88. As still not missing anything out front, Kenny Coppola still holding on to a 3/4 of a second lead. Justin Belmonte 2nd. The battle is for 3rd as now Wayne Bowen gets to his highest running spot in the race here tonight. Up into the 3rd position goes car number 78.
And about the biggest advantage we have seen of a leader off of a restart so far for that 77 machine, out to 3/4 of a second. Now a Bowen chasing down that 6th machine, about 3/10 of a gap separate that 2nd and 3rd place car as they run Bowen, as you mentioned, seeing the highest he's run all day long, looking to grab that 6 machine, get himself up in that second place spot, and of course then start working that time down up to that leader, that 77 machine of Coppola.
Coppola, Belmonte, Bowen, Davis, and Davis. Toyota, Ford, Toyota, Chevy, Toyota. Right now, your current top 5. Hunter Carmichael just behind the 29 of Chris Davis. 79 of Shane Davis right there as well. Battle for 4th between these 3, as Shane having a little bit of a connection issue there. Look also behind, that is Stephen Gibson trying to find the 7th spot. Pardon me, actually the other way around. It's Barry Sanders trying to find the 7th spot from Stephen Gibson.
Sanders down low on that inside line. We've been able to see that inside line, at least earlier in this race, work out, but does take some time in order to gain that advantage. Of course, right now, Sanders able to temporarily hold that advantage over Gibson. As we come towards the end of the turn, though, Gibson should be able to surge up, get to the bumper of that 88 machine of Sanders, see what moves they make here coming through the next turn. Looks like they will stay in line. 88 of Sanders now up to 7th.
3 of Hunter Carmichael getting up into the top 5 for the first time since the first stage of this race. And again, we speak of the speed that Barry Sanders currently has right now. Everybody in the top 11 came in on lap 92 except for him. Sanders came in under the first caution in this stage back on lap 98, of course, because he was a part of it. So Sanders does have a little bit fresher tires than everybody else around him. The interesting part about that is drivers who came in under this last caution, Brandon Bikey, Tim Wortman, Jordan Schmeeds, have a 14 lap tire advantage on the rest of the field. They haven't moved beyond 12th as now Bikey goes to the inside of Matthews up to 11th.
Certainly seems like as the sun went down that the tire advantage became less and less. And as you mentioned, these drivers enjoying better part of a 15-lap advantage. Really not able to take advantage of it, as we saw earlier with that 54 machine making a strong surge up through the field, taking those tires about halfway through stage 1.
Kenny Coppola is still about 0.8 of a second faster than the rest of the field right now. Justin Belmonte, Wayne Bowen, Shane Davis, and Hunter Carmichael, your current top 5. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. You are watching the second race in the round of 8 here for the Moonshiners Racing League Cup Series here from Homestead-Miami Speedway. Back here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, and just as we were about to go back from break, car number 5 had a little bit of a moment. Aaron Matthews coming through 3 and 4. We'll see how he was able to keep this car under control. Gets a little bit of a nudge from the 28, but how that wasn't worse, David. An absolute miracle.
Driver of this 5 machine, I've mentioned it multiple times tonight, really just having some great control of that race car even there. If he touched the wall, a very light tap to that outside wall, able to just really keep that car under control, keep that damage under control, despite getting a little out of shape with a little bit of help coming out of 4 there.
A little bit of help coming out of 4 for sure, and with how this racetrack runs and how it's ran this week, you certainly don't need any help to get loose coming out of some of these corners. As we'll take a look as everybody will come down pit road here to get a change of shoes, and that's part of the reason why we took the break there. While David was explaining something towards the end, right before we went to break there, my father came in and offered me dinner. Yeah, dark room, guy wearing black, not paying attention, noise-canceling headphones. All I see is an arm. It scared me half to death, so I needed to reset there during that break, as Coppola and Belmonte are going to come out just about even. But it will be the 77 who will keep the race lead.
Big advantage to that 6 machine, getting a great stop there. Pit box time of just under 14 seconds. So great job on that stop, getting that car serviced and certainly back out towards the front. 77 machine winning that race off pit road will be the control car here, getting us going back to green flag racing. Of note, you have Mullins, Bowen, and Randy Mullins, who we haven't seen for a little bit, taking advantage of some shorter stop times, about 7.5 seconds a piece, working their way back up. Of course, we see the 54 machine dive back down pit road. Looks like he's going to come in top off again, grab a little bit more fuel, possibly playing some strategy here, seeing what he can do again, trying to push that stop out as long as he can.
A couple of other guys came in, took 2 tires. Darren Mullins in the 64 did just that, got him out 3rd. Randy Mullins also took 4 tires. He got out 6th and has come back down pit road, I'm guessing to either top off or take the other 2 tires. So Randy Mullins had a chance after that first stage to get back up in the top 5, into the top 10, and start racing for a win again. Unfortunately, gives that up. He'll go from 6th to 16th on this restart. Hunter Carmichael also deciding to take a couple of tires, come back down, fill up on fuel. And by the way, I know you guys are concerned. Randy Mullins, 11 pit stops. John Binder, 12.
John Bender, of course, showing that he will not be outdone. Probably keeping an eye on that 54 machine. And anytime that 54 machine comes
here they
down,
come. Here they both.
keep an eye on it. There's that 33 machine. I will not be outdone for pit stops tonight.
This is a fantastic race within a race for these two. Absolutely incredible. So this will make 25 pit stops between just these 2 cars, topping off on fuel. And if my memory serves me correctly from the Sunday night NASCAR race this past Sunday, I believe this is like right teetering on the edge of being able to make it on fuel from here on out. So
Certainly,
these pit stops could mean something.
Certainly a point where you can make it on fuel. As a driver, you are going to be screaming for tires inside that cockpit. come the end of this race if you do try to push it all the way on a fuel run here. 77 machine with the control on this restart. Pace lights are off. Pace car about to dive down and away here. We'll see what he does on this restart, as he did trip up the field on the last one, get out to a great jump. Just about to hit the restart zone here. See what he does. Not able to get quite as big of an advantage over that 6 machine. Still able to get out in front of him, though. Out before turn 1 and 2. That 77 machine dives down to the low line, keeps it right there. 6 machine following closely behind, about 0.2 of a second off of him entering turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, Belmonte able to get a decent run off of that start. Now as Wayne Bowen faces off against Darren Mullins. Bowen on the inside, Mullins on the high side in the number 64. It appears as though, at least for the moment, is loose on 2 tires on that outside line. Mullins is not only going to lose the spot to Bowen, he's also going to lose it to Chris Davis and might lose a spot now to Chad Sullivan in the 21.
A little bit of a wiggle and a little bit of reminder for all these drivers, putting some fresh tires on those cars. Can't quite get back to the throttle as quickly as you'd like to coming off of turn 4 there. Could cause you a little bit of looseness, but thankfully for that 64 machine, able to keep it going the right way. Didn't lose too much control where it cost him a ton of position.
Haven't really seen too many of the same issues that we've seen throughout the week, as here's Wayne Bowen looking to the inside of Justin Belmonte, but we saw cars getting unbelievably loose coming off of the corners here over the course of this last week. Tonight, I mean, we're seeing it, but we're not seeing it nearly as much as we've seen at the other leagues that have participated at this racetrack this week.
Bowen and Belmonte currently battling it out for that second place position, and certainly doing a good job keeping those cars side by side. And we've seen this side by side, 2 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide racing all night long. So these drivers really having a level of control in these cars tonight that we really haven't seen, as you mentioned this week. Cars getting pretty loose coming out of the turns on some of these other races that we have covered.
Look just at the back of the top 10, Tim Wortman trying to take that 9th spot away from Barry Sanders. Sanders on the high side, can't do much with the run with Darren Mullins in front of him in the 64. He's going to really need to push here if he wants to get to the outside of the 64, going 3 wide. He does get to the outside of the 64. Mullins dips down. That forces Wortman to drop down even further. Barry Sanders goes from 10th to 8th in just 1 corner.
Finding those spots with all these cars stacked up. That 88 machine able to take advantage, gain a couple of positions in 1 corner. Now looking at the bumper of that 79 machine, a fellow playoff contender. Sanders is going to have his work cut out for him, as that 79 machine of Shane Davis has been fast all night long.
Absolutely has. This is just outside the top 10 here. 11th place, the number 43 of Stephen Gibson. Aaron Matthews, who we just saw spinning a moment ago. Paul Gallimore right here as well. Darren Mullins, Brandon Bikey, pole sitter, leader of a majority of stage 1. Is Kendall Leveren also in here, so positions are still moving and swapping here throughout this race. As here is the top 3. Kenny Coppola, Wayne Bowen, Justin Belmonte. Bowen looking to the inside going into turn 3, tries to get the run. He will. It'll be Coppola's run on exit. Coppola really pinching down. That's certainly another way to defend around here instead of just ripping the wall and taking the momentum there.
Certainly taking away the advantage of that low line, being able to just kind of nice and easily slide up the hill on exit. Coppola, understanding that, of course, running this low line so often, was able to pinch Bowen, try to hold him down just a little bit longer, make that exit not quite as smooth. Gives him the advantage on exit. That gives Belmonte the advantage over that 78 machine, able to get by him, at least temporarily, for that second place spot.
Justin Belmonte taking advantage. He will get that second spot as both of them go slipping and sliding coming off of turn 4. Everybody else pretty well single file at the moment is Aaron Matthews, again, who we just saw spinning a moment ago, getting back up into the top 10. No tire advantage here for Matthews. He came down pit road the same as everybody else under this last caution. So Matthews showing the pace in that number 5, back up inside the top 10.
Driver that has certainly seen a bit of everything tonight and certainly has some very good control of that race car. The driver of that number 5 of Matthews doing a great job keeping that car straight despite getting a little bent out of shape from some other drivers on the track today.
Munfordville, Kentucky native, that number 5 of Aaron Matthews. He's had a very up and down night here thus far. For those of you wondering about Kyle Holden, there he is. He has gotten back out on the racetrack. He is 8 laps down at the moment in that number 59, but he is the first car not on the lead lap. So as more cautions come out, he'll get closer and closer to getting back on the lead lap. But Holden, as high as he can go at the moment, 23rd position on track, so he has gotten back out after that incident earlier on.
Great to see them get those repairs done, get him back out there, at least give him an opportunity should things start happening. Of course, 54 machine of Mullins not too far in front of him, but still on the lead lap in the 21st position. If they can find a way to get enough cautions to get that 59 machine back on the lead lap, that will certainly be at least positions that could be made up for that 59 team.
Only 4 cars out on track that are not on the lead lap. Holden 8 laps down, Whitley 10 laps down. Middle Miss is 18 laps down. And then Chris Spear in that number 7, who's going to win the Perseverance Award this evening, 64 laps down, running in the 28th position. He can, with Derek Jacobs and Darren Mills out of the race in front of him, he can get as high as 26th here this evening.
Drivers at the front of the field still battling it out. You have the 78 machine now looking to the inside of the 6 machine. That would be Belmonte and Bowen going at it for that second place position. Not too long ago, they were just up to the bumper of that 77 machine of Coppola. Still leading the way and showing the way at this point, but that 6 machine and 78 machine, if they keep battling it out, do appear to be giving that 77 just a little bit of an advantage as he's now stretched out to 0.3 of a second as they fought over that second place spot.
And these 3 right now currently sit a second ahead of last week's winner, Chris Davis. Chad Sullivan in the 21. He is the highest running of the non-playoff drivers. Then there's about 3/4 of a second to Jeffrey Taylor, Shane Davis, Barry Sanders, and the rest of this field here. A good 10-car group after another small little gap between Davis and Sullivan, as these two running just off lines. Sullivan right down on the bottom. Davis straddling that bottom seam in the number 29. Meanwhile, Belmonte, Bowen, and Coppola pretty much running identical to each other all around this racetrack, and it's showing in their pace very, very equal between the top 3 cars right now.
Crossing the line with 50 to go, and these drivers starting to catch those laps, ticking down, and certainly with the last caution we had, everybody coming down, starting to think, how far do I want to push these tires, as we believe these cars are teetering right on the edge of having enough fuel to make it to the end of this race.
Yep, fuel should make it the rest of the way. However, the right front tire especially might object to that decision, as Belmonte just able to keep it ahead of Wayne Bowen, at least for the moment. Drifts up a little bit in the center of the corner. That'll allow Bowen to get to the inside in the 78 and still have enough momentum off the corner to be able to keep it just to his inside, as I believe that's the 7 about to get lapped for the 60. Oh no, that's the 74 getting past there as he's about to come down pit road to give way to these drivers. So look a little bit further back. Shane Davis all over the back of Jeffrey Taylor. Was now creating a little bit of a roadblock is at 74.
Of course, right behind that 79 machine of Davis, that 88 machine of Sanders, both of these playoff drivers. So every position really making a difference for these two at the moment. The way we run, 77 machine would lock himself into that championship four. That would leave Belmonte, Bowen, Davis, and Sanders to start fighting over those last two remaining spots, as the 29 machine has already locked himself into that championship round of four.
Again, we have not had a non-playoff driver win a playoff race yet this season. Chad Sullivan, right now running in fourth, is the closest to being able to do it. However, he's about a second off the leading trio, and Kenny Coppola starting to eke his way out front a little bit further and a little bit further every single lap. Belmonte a little bit slower than Coppola over the last couple of laps. You can see those lap times in red. Those are laps where Coppola was faster than Belmonte. In green, Belmonte was faster than Coppola. See what it is here this time. As Coppola comes across the line, he will do a 33.340. Belmonte a little bit slower.
Certainly might not seem like much, but those hundredths, of course, adding up a little bit at a time to tenths of a second advantages. So the 77 machine able to pull away by a bit now. That leaves the 6 and the 78 machine to battle it out for this second place position. Start getting those podium spots sorted out. Of course, Justin Belmonte having a pretty good run so far, able to hold that 78 machine of Bowen off. You get a good view out of his windshield, just how big that gap between the 6 and the 77 is right now.
And that's, you can't really tell because you got the roll cage support in the way for most of the corner, but that's what 0.6 of a second looks like in one of these cars. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, boy, it feels like it takes an eternity to work out that big a lead. It also takes an eternity, even longer, to work that gap back in, as Belmonte, again, just hundredths of a second slower. But as you mentioned, those hundredths add up.
Building that gap a little bit at a time. That 77 machine has found his way out to about 0.8 of a second now. As mentioned, about a couple hundredths of laps, but that's all it takes. That 21 machine of Sullivan, of course, looking at the bumper of the 78 machine of Bowen, who is currently trying to chase down that 6 machine of Belmonte. That would be our top three runners right now: Bowen, Belmonte, Coppola. Sullivan, as mentioned, the non-playoff driver that does have an opportunity, should anything go wrong with our leader right now, to upset these playoff drivers. Of course, last week, winner Chris Davis, running in that 5th place position, that 29 machine, already locked himself into that championship round of 4. Looking a little further back, we have Shane Davis in that 79 and Sanders in that 88. The next two playoff drivers, of course, trying to do what they can to get themselves locked into the round of 4 coming up in Phoenix.
6 of the 8 playoff drivers currently occupy the top 7 positions. The only outlier is the guy who just took over the 3rd spot. That would be Chad Sullivan, who is the 3rd fastest car on track here at the moment. Only Kenny Coppola and Chris Davis are running faster than that 21 right now, and Belmonte is about 1.5 slower than the 21 sitting behind him. So that 21 hoping to keep it green. He's still losing on Coppola, but man, he's got a fast hot rod right now, as does the 29.
Of course, as mentioned, we do believe that these drivers are right on the edge of having enough fuel to make it to the end. So it's really going to come down to how comfortable are these drivers with really pushing these tires to their limit. We really do expect them to make at least one more stop here just to get some fresh tires on that machine, and then, of course, run it all the way out to the end of this race.
This is the battle for second here. Sullivan has taken the spot thanks to his corner entry. Chris Davis will push on through as well, so Davis not having to work too hard to gain a couple of spots, and now the 21 and 29 set their sights on closing what is now a 1.8 second gap between themselves and Kenny Coppola in the 77 out in front. A little bit further back, close to the edge of the top 5. That is the number 1 of Brandon Bikey working his way around the outside of Tim Wortman. Aaron Matthews in the 5 also right here as well.
Drivers right at the back of the top 10 right now. That 83 machine holding that 10th place spot. The 1 of Bikey and that 5 of Matthews currently battling for that last position within the top 10. Drivers have been close all night long, and of course here as we start winding the laps down, only getting a little bit of a spread throughout this field as these drivers have really been side-by-side racing for a good majority of this race. Finally getting some relief, getting these cars in line and getting some draft work done, trying to make some passes here as we start closing the laps down here at Miami.
Also might be trying to save some fuel. As we mentioned, the race in the battle for the most pit stops, Randy Mullins, stage 1 winner, 7th place in points coming into this race. We saw him come in with John Binder to top off on fuel before we went back to green flag racing about 30 or so laps ago. Mullins currently running in the 19th position. He has not moved up a lick since the green flag flew. John Binder has gotten past him and has gotten about 6 seconds further ahead of Randy Mullins, trying to make it the rest of the way on fuel. Want to jump on board with Randy Mullins here to see what he's doing, and look at where the RPMs were at the apex of the corner, down at 6,500 in 5th gear. So yeah, he's not planning on coming in again.
Here you see exactly what I would expect out of a driver that is saving fuel
Almost
all the way
6,000.
down to 6,000 RPM there in the middle of 3 and 4. Keeping an eye on this race car as we ride along here. Just listen to how much off throttle time there is. You are well into the middle of the turn before he gets anywhere close to getting back onto that accelerator, and certainly showing that he's trying to do what he can, make this fuel stretch as long as it can, and of course, being off the throttle, also saving that rubber on those Goodyear tires. He's trying to make it to the end of this race right now.
And now, just to put it into perspective, here's Chad Sullivan going through the corner. Not only is he about 1,000 horsepower, or about 1,000 RPM higher, he's also shifting down into 4th gear. So that's the difference between a driver trying to save fuel and a driver that's trying to race for the lead right now, is about 1,000 RPM and a gear.
Certainly something we are going to have to keep an eye on, and of course the gap to the leader behind that 54 machine, of course, has to be closing as well. So keeping an eye on the distance between the 77 and the 54 machine is something we'll have to start keeping an eye on, as I expect our leaders here, we are about 32 or so to go to the end of this race. Should start looking at making some green flag pit stops here soon, barring any incidents on track bringing out a yellow.
Now, the drivers, there's 2 different races going on, clearly. Guys like Kenny Coppola, Chad Sullivan, Chris Davis up here at the front. If they plan on pitting again, they're trying to mathematize here a way to be able to pit with giving yourself enough time to, 1, use up the Goodyear tires and not really hit the fall off, but 2, also trying to give yourself enough time to make up whatever ground you lose. The race for Randy Mullins right now, and for a guy like John Binder as well, or maybe a Nick King, who we see in front of the 54 right now, is to try to manage the gap to the leader, because if you fall too far behind, it doesn't matter if you make it the rest of the way on fuel. If you've if you're too far behind, you can't even get out in front of Coppola and Sullivan to begin with.
Certainly lots of strategy to consider, and right now these drivers trying to think of all this while maintaining their positions in the field. Of course, Sullivan Davis right now 2-3 chasing down Coppola, who has a 2-second advantage over them. Belmonte about 2 seconds off of that duo behind Coppola right now, working with Bowen and Shane Davis, who are currently behind him. Bikey, Schmeets, Workman, Matthews, that group just a little bit farther back, making up the top 10. As you mentioned, tons of strategy right now. All these drivers really just trying to figure out where do things play in, and as you mentioned, how close to the end of this race do I want to cut it before I put those new tires on so that I still have enough time to make my way back up to the front through the field.
Now for the keen eye observer, you will have seen the 28 start to tumble down the order of Kendall Leveren. This here is a couple of laps ago with the 28. This is back on lap 167. Gets into the outside wall. Oh, his steering wheel broke. That's a real-life hardware issue that he's just had. We're going to jump inside the car here. I'm assuming we're going to see his wheel snap to the right. Watch his snap to the left. Watch his hand, or as much of it as you can. Try this view here. It's going through 3 and 4 now, so everything's all fine here. It's going to be in 1 and 2. I'm assuming we're going to see his hand snap to the left. In control. Or maybe this is the next lap. Let's try this again from here, maybe. Yep. See his hands now. He's getting it back, and by that time, it's already done.
Already too late and in the wall, so having some hardware issues with this longer race, and right now drivers just fighting to do what they can to make it to the end. Hardware issues are, of course, the last thing you want to think about and the last thing you want to see causing those issues towards the end of this race.
Yep, and here should be hoping if they don't get it here, then we're... Oh, no, it wasn't a hardware issue. He may have blown a tire and then had to crank it over to keep from getting into the wall. There's a telltale sign if someone has a hardware issue, because you'll see the wheel either snapped all the way to the left or snapped all the way to the right at a freakishly fast snap, which is something that a human just can't do that quickly. But that looked like he was pulling it over, pulling it over, pulling it over. That didn't look like a hardware issue, actually.
Could have very well been a tire going down, and if that is the case, going to have to start really keeping an eye on the field here. If he managed to wear that tire out completely and did have a tire go down, some of these drivers in the field, especially the 21 machine of Sullivan, the 77 of Coppola, who have really been pushing these cars to their limit, are going to have to keep an eye on that and maybe come in for some tires a little sooner than they expected.
Now, for those of you who don't have iRacing and just enjoy watching, once you get down to about 20% wear on any of the tires, you're at danger of blowing the tire. So if that was the case, or maybe he just got way too antsy on the throttle, whatever the case may be there, 20% is usually the threshold. It could go from 17 to 0. It could go from 20 to 0 on a blowout. It doesn't physically show a blowout. It just becomes really, really difficult to turn, just as any flat tire would.
And of course, last week we were at Las Vegas. You would have expected to see some drivers gambling. Right now, as they are running, it doesn't really look like that 77 or 21 machine are thinking about coming to pit road within the next couple of laps, perhaps even thinking that they can make it to the end of this race. Mullins right now, of course, 32 seconds off the leader, the last car currently on the lead lap. Really going to have to keep an eye and manage this gap back to that 77 machine of Coppola. Try to stay on the lead lap here just in case our leaders don't come down pit road.
That gap between Coppola and Sullivan, at least, is closing down, same as the gap between Mullins and Coppola. If Mullins goes a lap down here, which it looks very likely that he will, there's no guarantee that he is going to come out as the race leader, because with only 20 laps to go, you don't need to put a full load of fuel in the car in order to get it the rest of the way. So this could all have been for nothing here for the Stage 1 winner, and he's really going to hog tie himself going into Martinsville next week.
Certainly may all be for naught as we keep an eye on that right now. The 54 machine does go a lap down to our leader. 77 of Coppola out front right now, but it did cost him some time to Sullivan behind him, now cutting that lead back to about a second and a half, where it was almost 2 seconds before.
Sullivan is closed down. The gap did get as far out as about 2.4 seconds. He's closed in about 0.4 of a second, thanks to the Mullins intrusion, but also just about another 0.4 to a half a second on his own. That 21 has been the fastest car out on the racetrack, the only car in the 33.6s right now, as these guys have experienced about a second worth of drop-off here at Homestead on this tire run in what's been the longest green flag run of the race.
Driver certainly reaching a point where I would think that tire wear is starting to become uncomfortable, and as we just covered not too long ago, starting to push the limits of what might be possible on these tires as you really start to roll the dice if you get down below that 20% tire wear mark.
If you can make it on fuel, you will push the tires to go as far as you need them to go. And that might be where the 77 is right now, because he is continuing to lose. Here's the lap times, and Sullivan consistently about a tenth or so faster than Coppola on average over the last 5 laps.
Of course, as the leader, you do get to set the pace, so if Coppola believes that he can make it to the end on fuel, he can kind of dictate the pace here to Sullivan, and of course it's on Sullivan then to push him. If Sullivan believes that he needs to make a pit stop, push him as fast as he can and close that gap to make that 77 machine, of course, burn more fuel and force his hand into making a pit stop here.
Something that Tony and I always talked about whenever we would do broadcasts together on these long runs. As the leader, yeah, you do set the pace, but it's a lot easier to save tires. We take a look at battle for fourth here between Justin Belmonte, Shane Davis, and Brandon Bikey. It's a lot easier to save tire when you're behind someone because you have a gauge as to how hard you're pushing that car. When you're the leader, you don't have that gauge to look at and go, okay, maybe I'm pushing a little bit too hard. You kind of have to guess, and Sullivan, who's been behind drivers the entirety of this run compared to Coppola, who's been out front. You can see it in the lap times. Sullivan's been able to save those tires a little bit better.
Sullivan certainly in the catbird seat right now. Does appear to be starting to close that gap on our leader. 77 machine coming by, 14 to go as we make our way back around here. So certainly closing down on what I believe is a gap that these leaders think they can make it to the end. I wouldn't expect to see them pit here with under 15 to go, but it certainly is a possibility. Just have to keep an eye on how it plays out. Of course, for the 54 machine of Mullins, who was saving all that tire, saving all that fuel, this is certainly spelling some disaster right now.
If you were going to pit for 4 tires and fuel, you more or less would have done it already. you're getting now to the point where you're asking yourself, is it worth it to take 2 tires to try to get some track position or keep some track position? Or am I just doing fuel only? That's kind of where we're at right now. Are we going to see 2 tire stops to the finish, or are we going to see fuel only stops to get to the finish if you just need a splash and go?
And of course, as I am questioning it, we do see a driver or two kind of eye up that entry of pit road. So, of course, those drivers falling a lap down to our leader. Have to keep an eye on things, see if there is anybody that needs fuel. Certainly our leaders right now, that 77 and 21, running pretty strong and not thinking that they're going to be coming in here for a stop at all.
See on the time delta here, see how it updates this next lap as Coppola over the last couple of laps has been able to pull back some of that lead on Sullivan. So Coppola finding some pace in that number 77. Maybe he saved enough fuel, but still now within a second, or just about within a second, is the gap between Kenny Coppola and Chad Sullivan as we come down to 10 laps to go.
And of course, knowing that that 21 machine is coming to his bumper, that 1 second mark could have certainly been the hard line that the 77 wasn't willing to see that 21 machine cross. So both of these drivers may start pushing these cars a little bit harder. 10 to go, as you mentioned. We'll see if they can make it to the end here.
Gains quite a bit, gains almost 0.2 of a second in turns 1 and 2 alone, does Sullivan. So Sullivan, who, by the way, has absolutely left Chris Davis behind. He's about 2.5 seconds behind now, starting to really put the pressure on Kenny Coppola. Coppola, who has a chance to point his way in tonight if he doesn't get a win. Sullivan has a chance to get to become the first non-playoff driver to win a playoff race this season in the number 21, and it's about a half a second away from becoming a reality.
Farther back through the field for the 4th place position, just saw a couple of drivers swap some positions. Belmonte holding that 4th place position, racing over Davis right now. Of course, the number 1 machine of Bikey was holding that spot, possibly got into the wall, slowed down a little bit, or something that has him losing both of those positions at the moment. But right now, those 2 drivers doing what they need to do to try to point their way into that round of 4.
Ooh, that's what happened there. The 79 and the 1 both made contact. We'll go back and show you again here. A little bit of a better camera angle here. Here we see what happened. Oh, the 1 got really loose, and the 79 just not sure which way to go to keep that, to keep out, as we have a battle for the race lead here with 7 to go.
7 to go. We have the 21 machine to the inside of that 77 machine. Coppola looking like he's not going to fight extremely hard to keep this lead. 21 of Sullivan making it out front here. 0.2 of a second advantage for the moment over 77 of Coppola.
Coppola might be thinking big picture here, especially if he can't make it on fuel. Again, points leader coming into this race, could point his way in. And Sullivan doing this for pride. Started in P9, did Chad Sullivan, and Coppola gets into the wall going through turns 1 and 2. That's going to open up the gap to about 0.6 of a second.
Tires certainly have to be screaming right now. 21 of Sullivan in the lead, 77 of Coppola. Advantage for Coppola is if he can take it a little bit of this draft off of that 21 machine. If he does need to save a little bit of fuel, certainly could help him following in the tracks of the 21 right now.
Chad Sullivan does have 2 wins this season in that number 21. Won the season opener at Daytona, and then also won at Bristol, a part of the playoffs. Did not make it out of the round of 12. So Sullivan looking for that 3rd win of the season and that first big upset.
course, Sullivan now stretching that gap to over a second. Should be more than enough to break any hope of a draft for that 77 machine. 29 of Davis currently holding a fair 7-second advantage over the number 1 of Bikey. That leaves the 79 of Shane Davis, the 78 of Bowen to fight over that 5th place position as we are 3 to go. For the most part, our field is starting to look like it is set, and very few laps remaining here. Have to see who can come out on top, gain those vital points, gain those vital positions, and see who can point their way towards this championship, as it looks like Sullivan will be our winner tonight.
Also, another interesting little trend that we've seen here in the playoffs. Shane Davis won 2 races in the first round of the playoffs. Justin Belmonte won 2 races in the second round of the playoffs. And now it'll be up to Chris Davis and now what would appear to be Chad Sullivan to keep that trend alive as we are down to a lap and a half to go. Sullivan far and away faster than Kenny Coppola at this point.
Large advantage over Coppola. Certainly looks like he is gaining time per lap as well, now out to 0.2 of a second. He has 4 turns to make it back around, and we're looking at our winner.
White flag is out, 1 lap to go here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, presented by Team Watson Racing Setups. Well, unfortunately wasn't able to make it out of the round of 12 was Chad Sullivan, but he was able to keep his fuel and his tires in order here tonight. Coming off of turn number 4, Chad Sullivan wins here at Homestead-Miami Speedway, his 2nd win in the playoffs, and the first win by a non-playoff driver in 2023.
Certainly everything falling his way tonight. That number 21 machine able to save the tire, able to keep enough rubber under that machine and keep enough fuel in the tank to gain a 2.5 second over Coppola, who comes in 2nd place. And then, of course, Chris Davis, who already locked his way into the playoffs last week at Las Vegas, coming up behind that 21 machine right now, giving him a little bump, saying, hey, congrats, buddy. Great job on the win out there.
And did a fantastic job tonight, did all of these drivers. And again, Kenny Coppola most likely looking at the bigger picture, as you mentioned, seeing that he's basically pointed his way into this race, into the championship, as we'll work now on getting the 21, there he is, into the booth for the booth for interviews. David, as he burns it down, you're with our race winner, Chad Sullivan.
Yes, sir.
Chad, this is David in the booth. You got me?
Yes, I do.
Hey, congrats, man. Wasn't 100% sure if you guys could make it to the end on tires and fuel. You certainly proved a theory that I thought you guys were working with. Congrats on getting out there, being able to get the pass on the 77 machine, and then getting that nice gap, making sure that you are the first non-playoff driver so far to snag a win here in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, thank you. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to run Kenny down, too. I knew I was really, really good on a long run. And it was just trying to manage the tires and make sure I didn't get passed by too many people, that I could get back to him. That was a good race, good fun race. Congrats to Kenny and Chris Davis.
Certainly a long run there to end the race. Tell me, what was going through your mind at about 20 laps to go? Did you think you could make it to the end, or were you planning on making a pit stop somewhere around maybe the 15-lap mark?
No, I was pretty sure I was going to make it on fuel. Just from the testing that we'd done, I could get 67 out of it. So I was pretty sure that, if we backed a couple corners up, we'd be all right. And but that 2 seconds, man, he looked like he was a long way out there. And not only that, Chris Davis was coming there for a minute. He hung right in there. I thought, well, and he was running a similar line than I was. I thought, well, this may be a 3-car battle.
Certainly a very long endurance type run there for you to make it to the win today, but congrats, you did get it done. I'd like to give you this opportunity now to thank you, any sponsors, give some shout outs before we send you back to celebrate with your team.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Reaper Speed Labs for the setups they put underneath the car. Raging Cajun Bail Bonds, a sponsor, and Moonshiners Racing League, and all you guys up in the booth.
All right. Well, congrats again. Go celebrate that win, and we'll see you next week as we're racing at Martinsville, seeing who can grab that last couple of spots in the championship four.
Thank you, and congratulations to Kenny and Chris on a great run.
So that was our race winner, Chad Sullivan. Let's go now to our second place finisher, Kenny Coppola. Kenny, it looked like the tires got the better of you here tonight towards the end of that race.
Yeah, the car felt great all race, and I knew towards the end of these long races the track rubbers up and starts tightening up quite a bit out there, and I wanted to make a wedge adjustment to compensate for it with 65 to go, and I didn't because I was struggling a little bit with a tight-in, loose off condition and didn't want to make the car too loose, but probably should have made that change, and I didn't, and just fried the right front tire that last run. I seen Chad coming. I tried pacing him for as long as I could, but he was pretty darn strong tonight. Congrats to Chad on the win.
Now, of course, you're always going out there for the race win, but the fact that you came into this race with the points lead, won a stage, won your 23rd stage of the year, and have virtually pointed your way in by this point, does that take a little bit of the sting out of not being able to win tonight?
Hey, man, the way my second half of this season's been going the last 3 months, just to finish a race for me is a huge confidence builder. I've been getting in wrecked, not really that I involved too much, but just in the bad or wrong spot at the wrong time and get collected and stuff. I mean, it's part of the race, and so I'll happily take a second place finish. Chad had a really strong car, and I just ran a little too hard that last run.
Next up, we go to Martinsville Speedway. I believe earlier this year, as I'm trying to look back and find it quickly, you won at Martinsville earlier on this year. What are your thoughts going back to the paperclip for the second to last race of the season?
We're going to be bringing another solid car there. Martinsville is more about attrition than anything else. Stay out of the wrecks, and I think last time I actually had to come from the back with an EOL and just rode around and let the wrecks happen. So it's just about staying clean, like you mentioned earlier. I think I'm advanced to the final 4 on points. So it's not really that big of a race. I still want to go out there and win, but we're just going to take it easy.
Anyone you want to give a shout out or a thank you to before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to thank Kistler Rods. They make custom fishing rods, Martin Sports, Boomers button boxes, RS button box, Team Watson Racing, all my teammates and buddies at Beast Mode Performance, Warrior Wraps, and those guys at Warrior Racing. And then thank you guys for coming out every Wednesday night and broadcasting these races for us.
It's been our pleasure all season long. Kenny Coppola, your second place finisher tonight, bud. Congratulations.
Appreciate it, fellas.
And now that will leave David with our final interview tonight. That will be our third place finisher, Chris Davis.
Chris had a strong car all week last week. Strong car again tonight, coming home in third. Knowing that you have locked yourself into that championship round of 4 and looking forward next week's to Martinsville, how hard are you going to push next week to try to make sure that none of these other drivers have a safety net of winning to get in?
I'm going to push pretty hard, but it's Martinsville. Anything can happen. I mean, it's short track racing, a lot of tempers, so should be pretty fun. But yeah, I'm gonna try to keep this string of good top 5 finishes going, and hopefully come out on top up there too.
Again, great to see you on the podium. A very long green flag run to end this race. Was there a point where you thought you might have to stop again, or like our winner Chad Sullivan, were you pretty confident that you could make it to the end of the race from your last stop?
Yeah, I was confident. I knew I had about 2 laps to the good on fuel, and I knew with that nobody would be stopping for tires. So the only thing is I tried to back my pace up and just didn't back it up enough in the front of the run. And by the time I let Chad go by me, he was setting sail and gone. So a few more laps, I probably could have had Kenny, but it just a little too late.
Well, great to see you on the podium again. Love to give you this opportunity. Thank those sponsors, give any shout outs, and then we'll send you back to celebrate with the team.
Yeah, I just got to thank Beast Mode Performance, Kenny for building these fast setups. Just all the guys on the team, they put in a lot of hours each week just to get us where we're at. So thanks to them, thanks to my wife, and appreciate you guys putting on a good show.
All right. Well, congrats again, and we'll see you next week at Martinsville.
I appreciate it, guys.
And so, David, that will pretty much put a nice little bow here on this race tonight. And saw a lot, I mean, again, as we see every single week, we saw a lot of great racing, number one. But number two, also, we saw that long run and what a long run is able to do to and for some of these drivers, as unfortunately it did poorly to Coppola, but did for Sullivan come the end of this race.
Great opportunity to see some strategy play out. Of course, next week, everything out the window as we head to a short track. As we heard Kenny Coppola mention, a race of attrition coming up. Hopefully avoiding 2,500 laps of chaos next week, but we'll see how it plays out for these drivers. I'm excited to see who can possibly win their way into the championship round of 4, maybe cause an upset for drivers who are hoping to point their way in. But as we stand right now, just one driver guaranteed to make it, and that would be the number 29 machine of Chris Davis. And of course, we believe that the 77 machine will have enough points to point his way into the race coming up next week at Martinsville.
Yeah, that is the expectation, is that Kenny Coppola, basically by starting the race next week, should be able to point his way in. Shane Davis in a very good spot, finished 5th here tonight, came in tied for 2nd in points with Kyle Holden, who unfortunately had that big accident, finished back in the field. So it'll be a fight between Kyle Holden, Justin Belmonte, Wayne Bowen as drivers who could race their way in on points. It's going to leave Randy Mullins and Barry Sanders in a win and in situation, especially with the poor finish that that Mullins had tonight, even with winning the first stage.
Excited to see it all play out here, and can't wait to see what next week holds, Frank.
Yep, absolutely. And now we'll take a look at the final results here tonight from the Homestead-Miami Speedway. Chad Sullivan collects his 3rd win of the season, his 2nd in the playoffs. He will come home with the win. Kenny Coppola, Chris Davis, Brandon Bikey, and Shane Davis, your top 5. Wayne Bowen, Jordan Schmeets, Tim Wortman, Jeffrey Taylor, and Justin Belmonte come home in the top 10. Paul Gallimore, Barry Sanders, Hunter Carmichael, Stephen Gibson, and John Binder, the winner for the most times down pit road here tonight, finishes out in 15th spot. Darren Mullins, Randy Mullins, Aaron Matthews, Nick King, and Matt Metler Rounding out in 20th, Kyle Holden, the lowest of the playoff finishers tonight, in 21st. Jamison Middlemiss, Paul Whitley, Kendall Leveren, Warren Young, 25th. Chris Spear, Derek Jacobs, Darren Mills, Ed Boyles, Bobby Justice, 30th. Nicholas Atwood, Caden Norfree, and Ryan Huff rounding out your field of 33 drivers tonight. So that will do it for us here tonight. For my broadcast partner, David Modespa, I'm Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for making us a part of your evening. We will see you all next week from the Martinsville Speedway in Martinsville, Virginia. Until then, as you walk down the road of life, please don't play in traffic. Good night, everybody.